Clara swung the copper pot with both hands and felt the deputy's skull crack under the blow. He dropped like a slaughtered hog. Blood splattered across her torn dress, warm and wrong. Behind her, Lily screamed. Tommy shouted. The sheriff was already drawing his pistol. "Run!" Clara grabbed Sammy's wrist and pulled. "Run, now!" 5 children fled into the darkness, wanted by the law, hunted like animals. All because a 12-year-old girl refused to let them take her babies away. Subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the very end. Comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far our story has traveled. 3 hours earlier, Clara Ruth Whitfield had been praying. Not the proper kind of praying, with folded hands and closed eyes. The desperate kind. The kind where you bargain with God because you ain't got nothing left to lose. "Please," she whispered into the darkness of the abandoned barn. "Please, just one more day. Just let us stay hidden one more day." Lily coughed in her sleep. The wet, rattling sound that had kept Clara awake for 3 nights straight. At 3 years old, her baby sister was too young to understand why they lived in barns and ate scraps. Too young to remember Mama's face. Too young to know their daddy had looked at 5 hungry mouths and decided he'd rather disappear than feed them. "Clara?" Tommy's voice came from the shadows. Her 10-year-old brother crawled toward her, careful not to wake the others. "You should be sleeping," Clara said. "Can't sleep." Tommy settled beside her, his shoulder pressing against hers. "Keep thinking about what happens if they find us." "They won't. But if they do..." Clara turned to look at him. Even in the darkness, she could see the fear he was trying to hide. Tommy wanted so badly to be the man of the family. He puffed out his chest and talked tough, but he was still just a little boy. A little boy who'd watched his mama die and his daddy walk away. "They won't find us," Clara said firmly. "And even if they do, I ain't letting nobody separate us. You hear me? Nobody." Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Then he whispered, "I heard what Mrs. Patterson said about that ranch in the mountains. You really think some stranger's going to take in 5 kids?" "I think I can cook better than any woman in this territory." Clara's hand found the copper pot beside her, its surface worn smooth by years of use. Mama's pot. The only thing she'd managed to save when the creditors came. "And I think a man who needs a cook ain't going to care how old I am, long as the food's good." "That's a mighty big gamble, Clara. You got a better idea?" Tommy didn't answer. He didn't have to. They sat in silence, listening to Mercy's soft snoring and Sammy's restless movements. At 5 years old, Sammy hadn't spoken a single word since the morning he woke up and found Daddy's bed empty. The doctor in town called it nervous shock. Said it might pass. Said it might not. Clara called it heartbreak. The kind that steals your voice because there ain't no words for that much pain. "Get some sleep," she told Tommy. "We leave at first light." "Where are we going?" "To find Mrs. Patterson. She'll tell us how to reach that ranch." Tommy nodded slowly. "And if the sheriff finds us first?" Clara's jaw tightened. Then God help him. Dawn came cold and gray. Clara woke the others as gently as she could, but Lily still cried when pulled from her warm nest of hay. Mercy, 8 years old, with her mama's red hair and freckles, immediately started humming to calm the baby down. "Hush now, Lily Bird," Mercy sang softly. "Hush now, don't you cry. Sister's gonna find us a home up in the sky." It wasn't a real song. Mercy made up songs the way other children made up games. She'd been doing it since she was old enough to talk, filling silence with melody, because silence reminded her too much of sad things. "That's real pretty, Mercy." Clara lifted Lily onto her hip. "But we gotta be quiet now, understand? Like little mice." "I can be quiet," Mercy's eyes went wide and serious. "I can be the quietest mouse in the whole world." "I know you can, sweetheart." Sammy stood apart from the others, his dark eyes fixed on something only he could see. Clara's heart ached every time she looked at him. Before Daddy left, Sammy had been the loudest of them all, chattering, laughing, asking questions from sunup to sundown. Now he moved through the world like a ghost, present, but not quite there. "Come on, Sammy." Clara held out her hand. "Stay close to me." He didn't take her hand, but he followed, and that was enough. They slipped out of the barn and made their way toward town, keeping to the tree line where they could duck out of sight if needed. Clara's plan was simple. Find Mrs. Patterson at the general store, get directions to the ranch, leave before anyone noticed 5 vagrant children wandering the streets. Simple plans, Clara had learned, had a way of falling apart. They reached the edge of town just as the sun broke through the clouds. Clara could see the general store from where they crouched behind a water trough. Mrs. Patterson was sweeping the front porch, her gray hair pulled back in its usual tight bun. "Wait here," Clara told the others. "Don't move, don't make a sound. I'll be right back." "I want to come," Mercy whined. "No." "But Clara—" "I said no." Clara softened her voice. "I need you to watch Lily and Sammy for me. Can you do that? Can you be the big sister for just a few minutes?" Mercy's chest puffed with pride. "I can do it. I'm real responsible." "I know you are." Clara kissed her forehead. "Tommy, keep your eyes open. Anything looks wrong, you take them and run. Don't wait for me." Tommy's face went pale. "Clara, I ain't leaving you. You'll do what I tell you." Clara grabbed his arm, hard. "Those babies are more important than me. More important than both of us. You understand?" For a moment, Tommy looked like he might argue. Then his jaw set in that stubborn way, and he nodded once. "Go on then," he said roughly, "and be quick about it." Clara darted across the open ground toward the general store. Her heart pounded so loud she was certain everyone in town could hear it. She reached the porch steps just as Mrs. Patterson looked up. "Lord have mercy!" The old woman pressed a hand to her chest. "Clara Whitfield, you nearly scared me to death. What are you doing here, child? I thought you'd left town days ago." "We tried, ma'am." Clara glanced over her shoulder, making sure no one was watching. "But Lily got sick, and we had to stop." "Is she all right?" "She will be. Ma'am, I need your help. That ranch you told me about, the one in the mountains. How do I get there?" Mrs. Patterson's face creased with worry. "Stone Creek Ranch? Child, that's a hard 15 miles through rough country." And Ezekiel McAllister ain't exactly known for his charitable nature. "I ain't asking for charity. I'm asking for work." Clara lifted her chin. "You said he needs a cook. I can cook." "You're 12 years old." "I've been cooking since I was 7. I can make biscuits that melt on your tongue and gravy that'll make a grown man weep. My mama taught me everything she knew, and she was the best cook in 3 counties. Mrs. Patterson studied her for a long moment. Something shifted in the old woman's eyes. Respect, maybe, or pity. "Follow the north road until you reach Miller's Creek," she said quietly. "Cross at the shallow point, then keep the mountains to your left. When the road forks, take the right path. It'll lead you straight to Stone Creek." "Thank you, ma'am." "Clara," Mrs. Patterson caught her arm. "McAllister's a hard man. Lost his wife and daughter in a fire some years back. He ain't been right since. Don't expect kindness from him." "I don't expect nothing, ma'am." "Just a chance." Mrs. Patterson reached into her apron and pressed something into Clara's hand. 2 biscuits, still warm from the oven. For the little ones, she said softly. Now go, child, and God go with you. Clara ran. She was halfway back to the water trough when she heard the voice that turned her blood to ice. Well, well, if it ain't the Whitfield girl. Sheriff Thaddeus Burke stepped out from the shadow of the livery stable. His deputy, a thick-necked man named Horace, flanked him on the right. Clara froze. Funny thing, the sheriff said, walking toward her with slow, deliberate steps. I rode out to that barn this morning to collect you and your siblings. Imagine my surprise when I found it empty. We ain't done nothing wrong. That's so. Burke pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. Judge Morrison seems to think different. Signed this order himself. The Whitfield orphans are to be collected and placed in appropriate homes. We ain't orphans. Our daddy's coming back. Your daddy's a drunk who abandoned 5 children to starve. Burke's voice hardened. The law says you need proper care. The law says you want to split us up. Clara's voice cracked. Send my sisters to some orphanage 200 miles away. Send my brothers to the Holbrook farm. She spat the name like poison. I know what happens to boys at that place. I ain't letting you take them there. Burke's eyes narrowed. You ain't got a choice, girl. Like hell I don't. Clara ran. She heard Burke curse behind her, heard boots pounding against dirt. She didn't look back. She just ran, her legs pumping, her lungs burning, her mind screaming one word over and over. Kids. 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 She rounded the water trough at full speed. Run! She screamed. Tommy, take them and run! But it was too late. Horace had circled around. He stood between Clara and her siblings, his meaty hands already reaching for Tommy. No! Tommy swung his fist, catching Horace square in the nose. Blood sprayed. The deputy howled. You little bastard! Horace backhanded Tommy so hard the boy's feet left the ground. He crashed into the dirt and didn't get up. Mercy screamed. Lily wailed. And Sammy, silent Sammy, stood frozen with his eyes squeezed shut, his small hands pressed over his ears. Horace grabbed Mercy by the hair. Got him, Sheriff, he called out. Got the whole litter. Something broke inside Clara. Later, she wouldn't remember reaching for the copper pot, wouldn't remember the weight of it in her hands, or the way the morning sun glinted off its battered surface. All she'd remember was the sound of metal meeting bone, a wet, hollow crack that echoed across the empty street. Horace's grip on Mercy went slack. His eyes rolled back. His knees buckled, folded, gave out completely. He hit the ground face first and didn't move. Clara stood over him, breathing hard. Mama's copper pot clutched in both hands. Blood dripped from its rim. Her blood was roaring so loud she barely heard Burke's shout of rage. You killed him! The sheriff drew his pistol. You goddamn killed him! He ain't dead. Clara's voice came out steady, cold, nothing like her own. But he will be if you don't let us go. Burke's face twisted with fury. You're gonna hang for this, girl. All of you. I'll see you hang. Tommy. Clara didn't take her eyes off Burke. Get Sammy. Mercy, grab Lily. We're leaving. Clara, he's got a gun. Now, Tommy. Her brother scrambled to his feet, blood streaming from his split lip. He scooped Sammy into his arms. Mercy clutched Lily against her chest, both girls sobbing. You ain't going nowhere. Burke raised his pistol. I'll shoot you where you stand. Clara stepped forward. 1 step. 2. Burke's hand trembled. You gonna shoot a 12-year-old girl, Sheriff? Clara's voice was quiet now. Deadly quiet. In front of God and everybody? That what kind of man you are? Sweat beaded on Burke's forehead. His finger tightened on the trigger. Clara took another step. My mama made me a promise before she died. Clara's eyes locked onto Burke's. "She made me swear to keep my family together. I aim to keep that promise, Sheriff, and I will walk through hellfire to do it." For one terrible moment, the world held its breath. Then Burke lowered his gun. "This ain't over," he snarled. "I'll hunt you down. Every lawman in the territory will be looking for you." "Then they best bring more than one gun." Clara turned her back on the sheriff. She didn't run. She walked. Slow and steady, her siblings falling into step behind her, the copper pot still gripped in her blood-stained hands. They walked until the town disappeared behind them. Walked until Clara's legs shook so bad she could barely stand. Only then did she let herself collapse against a tree, her whole body trembling with spent adrenaline. "Clara?" Mercy's voice was tiny, terrified. "Clara, are you okay?" Clara pulled her sister close, pulled all of them close, gathering them into her arms like she could protect them from the whole world. "I'm okay," she whispered. "We're all okay." "That man," Tommy's voice shook. "You hit him real hard, Clara. Real hard." "I know." "What if he's dead?" Clara closed her eyes. "Then God forgive me, because I ain't sorry." They rested until the shaking stopped. Clara divided Mrs. Patterson's biscuits, giving most to Lily and Sammy. Mercy refused to eat until Clara promised to have half. "We gotta keep moving," Clara said finally. "The sheriff wasn't lying. He'll have men after us before nightfall." "Where are we going?" Tommy asked. "Stone Creek Ranch. It's about 15 miles north." 15 miles? Mercy's eyes went wide. "Clara, my feet already hurt." "I know, sweetheart. I know." Clara knelt in front of her sister. "But remember what Mama used to say? When the road gets hard, you just gotta keep walking," Mercy finished quietly. "That's right." Clara smoothed Mercy's tangled hair. "We're Whitfields, and Whitfields don't quit." They walked, through the afternoon heat and into the cool of evening, across Miller's Creek, the icy water soaking through their worn shoes, up hills that seemed to go on forever, and down ravines that threatened to swallow them whole. Lily fell asleep on Clara's back, her small arms wrapped around her big sister's neck. Sammy walked beside Tommy, his hand clutching his brother's shirt. He still hadn't made a sound, but his eyes had lost some of their emptiness. He was present. He was trying. When the sun began to set, Mercy started to sing. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word," she sang softly, her voice thin but sweet. "Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird." Clara's throat tightened. That was Mama's song. The song she'd sung to all of them, every night, without fail, until the fever took her voice, and then her breath, and then everything else. "And if that mockingbird don't sing," Tommy joined in, his voice rough and off-key, "Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring." Clara felt tears burn her eyes. She blinked them back. They couldn't afford tears. Not yet. The stars were out by the time they reached the fork in the road. Clara's legs burned, her back ached from carrying Lily. But she could see something in the distance, a faint glow against the darkness. Lights. "Is that it?" Tommy asked. "Is that the ranch?" "Has to be." "It's big." Mercy pressed closer to Clara. "Real big. What if they don't want us?" "Then we'll find somewhere else." "What if there ain't nowhere else?" Clara didn't answer. She couldn't. They approached the ranch as dawn painted the sky pink and gold. Clara had never seen anything like it. Sprawling pastures where cattle grazed, sturdy barns and outbuildings, and in the center, a 2-story log house that looked like something from a dream that could save them, or crush them completely. "Wait here," Clara told the others. "Let me do the talking." She approached the front gate alone, her heart hammering against her ribs. Two men sat on the fence, playing cards. They looked up as she drew near, their expression shifting from boredom to disbelief. "Well, I'll be damned," one muttered. "Jonas, you seeing this?" The older man, Jonas, squinted at Clara. "I'm seeing. Don't mean I understand." He called out to her. "You lost, little miss?" "No, sir." Clara stopped in front of the gate. "I'm looking for Mr. McAllister. I heard he needs a cook." Jonas and his companion exchanged glances. Then they burst out laughing. "A cook?" Jonas slapped his knee. "Darlin', you ain't old enough to light a stove without burning yourself." "I'm 12, sir, and I've been cooking since I was 7. "That's real sweet." Jonas's laughter faded. "But Mr. McAllister don't hire children. Now run along home before—" "I ain't got a home." The words hung in the air. Jonas's smile disappeared. "What do you mean you ain't got a home?" Clara gestured behind her. Tommy stepped forward, leading the others out of the shadows. Mercy clutching Lily. Sammy trailing behind, his eyes fixed on the ground. "Good Lord," the other man breathed. "There's 5 of them." Jonas stared at the ragged children, his face unreadable. "Where's your folks, girl?" "Dead," Clara said flatly. "Or might as well be. And you came all this way looking for work?" "Yes, sir." "With 4 young ones in tow?" "They go where I go." Jonas rubbed his jaw. "Listen, child, I feel for you, truly I do. But Mr. McAllister ain't exactly the charitable type. Lost his wife and daughter some years back. Ain't been right since. He's turned away grown women with experience and references. A 12-year-old with 4 mouths to feed?" He shook his head. "It ain't gonna happen." Clara felt something crack inside her. All those miles, all that hope. For nothing. "Please," she whispered. "Please, just let me talk to him. Let me show him what I can do." "I'm sorry, miss. I truly am, but—" "What's going on here?" The voice came from behind Clara, deep and rough, like thunder rolling across distant hills. She turned, and her breath caught in her throat. Ezekiel McAllister was the biggest man she'd ever seen. Tall as a pine tree, with shoulders broad as a barn door. His hair was dark, shot through with gray, and his face looked like it had been carved from granite by an angry god. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold. Gray as storm clouds, and just as empty. He looked at Clara, looked at the 4 small figures huddled behind her. Something flickered in those dead eyes, something that came and went so fast she almost missed it. Pain. "I asked a question," McAllister said. "What's going on?" Jonas cleared his throat. These children are looking for work, sir. I was just explaining that I can speak for myself." Clara stepped forward, forcing herself to meet that terrible gaze. "Mr. McAllister, my name is Clara Whitfield. I heard you need a cook." "You heard wrong." "With respect, sir, I don't think I did." Clara's voice trembled, but she pressed on. "Mrs. Patterson in Willow Springs told me you've gone through 4 cooks this past year. Said your standards are too high for most folks." McAllister's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Patterson talks too much." "Maybe so, but that don't make her wrong." Clara reached into her bundle and pulled out the copper pot. "This was my mama's. She could take scraps and make a meal fit for a king. She taught me everything she knew. Give me one chance, sir, one day. If you don't like my cooking, we'll leave and never bother you again." McAllister stared at the battered pot, at the blood still staining its rim. "That blood," he said quietly. "Whose is it?" Clara's chin lifted. "A man who tried to take my family away from me." "You kill him?" "No, sir, but I would have." Something shifted in McAllister's face. The granite cracked, just slightly. "You got nerve, girl. I'll give you that." "I got more than nerve, sir. I got 4 hungry mouths depending on me, and a promise to my dying mama that I aim to keep." Clara's voice broke. "Please, I ain't asking for charity. I ain't asking for pity. I'm just asking for a chance to prove myself. One chance. That's all." McAllister was silent for a long moment. His eyes moved from Clara to the children behind her, to Tommy, standing tall despite his split lip, to Mercy, clutching Lily like a lifeline, to Sammy, frozen in place with his eyes on the ground. Then Sammy moved. Clara watched, heart in her throat, as her silent brother walked slowly across the dusty yard. He stopped in front of McAllister, tilted his head back to look up at the towering rancher, and reached out his hand. His small fingers brushed against McAllister's calloused palm. Just a touch. Just a moment. Then Sammy stepped back and returned to Clara's side. McAllister stood frozen. His face had gone pale. His hands trembled at his sides. "Mr. McAllister?" Jonas sounded worried. "Sir, are you—" "1 week." McAllister's voice came out hoarse, ragged. "You got 1 week to prove yourself. If the food's good, you stay. If it ain't, you're gone." Clara's heart nearly burst. "Thank you, sir. You won't regret—" "I ain't finished." McAllister's eyes found hers. "Those children stay out of my way. I don't want to see them, hear them, or be reminded they exist. They work, they keep quiet, and they don't cause trouble. Understood?" "Yes, sir." "And one more thing." McAllister leaned down until his face was inches from Clara's. "You ever lie to me, ever betray my trust, and I'll throw you out so fast your head will spin. I don't care how many hungry mouths you got or how many promises you made. Are we clear?" Clara met his gaze without flinching. "Crystal clear, sir." McAllister straightened. "Jonas, show them to the kitchen quarters." He turned and walked away without another word. Clara stood there, shaking, barely able to believe what had just happened. They were in. Against all odds, against all reason, they were in. Jonas approached, shaking his head in wonder. "I've been working for that man for 12 years. Never once seen him change his mind about anything." He looked at Clara with something like respect. "You got guts, little miss. I'll give you that." "I got family," Clara said quietly. "That's worth more than guts." Jonas led them through the ranch to a small building attached to the main kitchen. 2 rooms, barely furnished, but clean and dry. "Ain't much," Jonas admitted, "but it's warm, and there's a stove for heat. Kitchen's through that door. You'll find flour, meat, eggs, the basics. Men eat breakfast at 6, dinner at noon, supper at 6. 17 hands total, including me." 17. Clara's mind was already racing, planning menus. "I can handle that." "We'll see." Jonas paused at the door. "Listen, Miss Clara. McAllister's a hard man, but he wasn't always that way. Before the fire—" He trailed off. "Just don't take it personal if he seems cold. He's got his reasons." "The fire," Clara said carefully. "Mrs. Patterson mentioned something about his wife and daughter." Jonas's face closed off. "Ain't my story to tell. Just be patient with him. And whatever you do, don't mention the girl. Don't mention Emma." Emma. Clara filed the name away. "Thank you, Jonas, for everything." Jonas tipped his hat and left. For a moment, Clara just stood there, staring at the empty room. Then Lily's tiny voice broke the silence. "Sissy, I'm hungry." Clara turned to face her family. 4 pairs of eyes stared back at her, waiting, trusting. She smiled. "Well," she said, "let's see what we've got to work with." That night, after feeding her siblings and putting them to bed, Clara sat alone in the kitchen. The fire had burned down to embers, casting dancing shadows on the walls. She looked at the copper pot, still stained with Deputy Horace's blood. She should clean it. She knew she should. But not yet. Clara pressed her hand against the cool metal, feeling the dents and scratches that told the story of 1,000 meals. Mama's hands had touched this pot. Mama's love had seasoned every dish that came out of it. "I kept my promise, Mama," Clara whispered into the darkness. "I kept us together." But she knew, deep down, that the hardest part was still to come. Tomorrow, she would have to prove herself. Tomorrow, she would have to make a broken man believe in something again. Clara closed her eyes and let the warmth of the dying fire wash over her. Tomorrow. Clara woke before dawn, her body aching from the hard floor, but her mind already racing. She'd slept maybe 3 hours, her thoughts churning through recipes and measurements and strategies for winning over 17 hungry men. Lily was curled against her side, thumb in her mouth. Mercy had wrapped herself around Sammy like a protective blanket. Tommy slept with his back against the wall, positioned between his siblings and the door. Even in sleep, he was guarding them. Clara eased herself up, careful not to wake the others. She pulled on her shoes, tied back her hair, and slipped into the kitchen. The stove was cold. She'd have to fix that first. Within minutes, she had a fire going. Within an hour, she had flour spread across the work table, butter softening near the heat, eggs cracked into a bowl. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory taking over while her mind calculated portions. 17 men. That meant at least 50 biscuits, 2 dozen eggs, a pound of bacon, maybe more. Coffee, strong and black. Gravy thick enough to coat a spoon. Clara worked in silence, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and the soft thump of dough against wood. She rolled, cut, arranged. Rolled, cut, arranged. The rhythm was soothing, familiar. This was what she knew. This was what she was good at. The first batch of biscuits went into the oven just as pink light crept through the window. "Clara!" She turned. Tommy stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You should rest more," Clara said. "Your lip's still swelling." "I'm fine." Tommy crossed to the stove, peering at the pots and pans. "You need help?" "You know how to cook?" "No, but I can learn." Clara smiled despite herself. "All right. See that bacon? Lay it out flat in the big pan. Don't let the pieces overlap." Tommy set to work, his movements clumsy but determined. Clara watched him from the corner of her eye, her heart swelling with pride. He was trying so hard to be useful, to matter. "Tommy? Yeah? Thank you. For yesterday. For fighting back." Tommy's hands stilled on the bacon. "Fat lot of good it did. He knocked me down like I was nothing. You stood up. That's what matters." Clara turned back to her dough. "Mama would have been proud." Tommy didn't respond. But when Clara glanced over, she saw him standing a little taller. By the time the sun fully rose, the kitchen smelled like heaven. Biscuits golden brown and steaming. Bacon crispy at the edges. Eggs scrambled with cream and a pinch of pepper. Gravy rich with drippings and herbs Clara had found in the pantry. And coffee, strong enough to wake the dead. Clara heard voices outside, boots on wooden steps. Her stomach clenched with nerves. This was it, her one chance. The door swung open and men began filing in. Big men, weathered by sun and wind, their faces rough and skeptical. They stopped short when they saw the spread on the table. "Well, hell," one of them muttered. "Would you look at that?" Jonas appeared at the front of the group, his eyebrows climbing toward his hairline. "Miss Clara, you did all this yourself?" "My brother helped with the bacon." Jonas approached the table slowly, like he was approaching a wild animal. He picked up a biscuit, turned it over in his hands, and took a bite. His eyes closed. "Lord Almighty," he breathed. "Boys, you gotta try this." The men descended on the table like locusts. Clara watched, heart pounding, as they grabbed biscuits and bacon, shoveled eggs onto plates, poured gravy over everything in sight. The sounds that followed were almost obscene. Groans of pleasure, muttered curses of disbelief. "These biscuits," a young cowhand said, his mouth still full. "Ma'am, these are the best biscuits I ever tasted." "The gravy," another added. "It's got something in it, something I can't place." "Sage," Clara said quietly. "Just a pinch. My mama's secret." The men ate like they hadn't seen food in weeks. Plates were cleaned and refilled. The coffee pot emptied and was replaced. By the time the last man pushed back from the table, there wasn't a crumb left. Jonas wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Miss Clara, I owe you an apology. I didn't think you could do it." "Most folks don't." "Well, they're fools." Jonas stood, adjusting his hat. "I'm gonna go tell the boss his breakfast is ready. Though I reckon he already knows, the way this kitchen smells." Clara's nerves spiked again. The men were one thing. McAllister was another. "I'll prepare a tray," she said. "Does he eat in his study?" "Always has. Ain't much for company these days." Jonas paused at the door. "Word of advice? Don't try too hard. He can smell desperation like a dog smells fear." Clara nodded and set to work on McAllister's tray. She chose the best biscuits, the crispiest bacon, eggs cooked just past soft. She poured coffee into a cup she'd scrubbed until it gleamed, and arranged everything on a wooden tray she'd found in the pantry. Then she stopped. Something was missing. Clara looked around the kitchen until her eyes landed on a small jar of honey. Wild honey from the looks of it. Golden and thick. Mama used to drizzle honey on her biscuits. Said it was like adding sunshine to bread. Clara added a small dish of honey to the tray and carried it out of the kitchen. The main house was bigger than it had looked from outside. Clara's boots echoed on hardwood floors as she made her way down the hall, following Jonas's directions to McAllister's study. The walls were bare. No pictures, no decorations. Nothing to suggest anyone actually lived here. It felt like a tomb. Clara stopped in front of a heavy oak door and knocked. "What?" The voice from inside was gruff, annoyed. "It's Clara, sir. I brought your breakfast." A long pause. Then, "Leave it outside." Clara hesitated. She should do as he said. Should set the tray down and walk away and count herself lucky he hadn't thrown her out already. But that wasn't how you won someone over. That wasn't how you proved yourself. She opened the door. McAllister sat behind a massive desk, papers spread out before him. He looked up with a scowl that could curdle milk. "I said leave it outside." "I heard you, sir." Clara crossed the room and set the tray on the edge of his desk. "But hot food don't stay hot for long, and cold biscuits ain't worth eating." McAllister stared at her. His gray eyes were hard, unreadable. "You got a problem with authority, girl?" "No, sir. I got a problem with wasted food." For a moment, Clara thought she'd gone too far. McAllister's jaw tightened, and his hands curled into fists on the desk. Then something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "You got nerve," he said. "I'll give you that." "So I've been told." McAllister looked down at the tray. Clara watched as he picked up a biscuit, examined it, and took a small bite. He went still. Clara held her breath. "This honey," McAllister said slowly. "You added honey?" "Yes, sir. My mama used to say, 'Sunshine to bread.'" McAllister's voice had gone strange, distant. "That's what she used to call it. Sunshine to bread." Clara blinked. "Sir?" McAllister set the biscuit down. His hands were trembling slightly. "My wife," he said quietly. "She used to say the same thing." Clara didn't know what to say. The air in the room had changed, grown heavy with something she couldn't name. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to—" "Get out." The words were sharp, sudden. McAllister wouldn't meet her eyes. "Sir, I said get out." His voice cracked. "Leave the tray. Just go." Clara went. She made it back to the kitchen before her legs gave out. She sank onto a stool, her heart racing, her mind spinning. What had just happened? "Clara?" Mercy's voice came from the doorway. "Clara, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Maybe she had. "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart." Clara forced a smile. "Just tired. Did you eat?" "Tommy saved us biscuits. They were real good, Clara. Almost as good as Mama's." The words hit Clara like a punch to the chest. Almost as good as Mama's. That was the highest praise Mercy knew how to give. "Thank you, honey. That means a lot." The morning passed in a blur of washing and preparing. Clara scrubbed every pot, every pan, every surface until the kitchen gleamed. She took inventory of the pantry, made notes about what was running low, planned menus for the next 3 days. Anything to keep her mind off McAllister's face when she'd mentioned the honey. Around noon, Jonas appeared in the doorway. "Boss wants to see you." Clara's stomach dropped. "Did I do something wrong?" "Don't think so. He ate every bite on that tray." Jonas scratched his chin. "First time in months he's cleaned his plate." Clara followed Jonas to McAllister's study. Her nerves wound tight as piano wire. She knocked and waited. "Come in." McAllister was standing by the window when she entered, his back to her. He didn't turn around. "Close the door." Clara obeyed, her heart hammering. "This morning," McAllister said slowly, "I was harsh with you. That wasn't fair." Clara blinked. She'd expected anger, accusations, not this. "You don't need to apologize, sir." "I ain't apologizing." McAllister turned to face her. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he'd been rubbing them. Or crying. "I'm explaining. There's a difference." "Yes, sir." McAllister crossed to his desk and sat down heavily. He gestured to a chair across from him. "Sit." Clara sat. "My wife's name was Mary Ellen," McAllister said. "She was the best cook I ever knew. Made biscuits that could make a grown man weep. Drizzled honey on them. Said it was like sunshine to bread," Clara finished quietly. McAllister nodded. "She died 7 years ago. Her and my daughter both. Fire took them while I was away on a cattle drive." Clara felt her throat tighten. "I'm so sorry, sir." "Don't be. Wasn't your fault." McAllister's gaze drifted to something on his desk. A small frame, Clara realized. A photograph. "My daughter's name was Emma," he continued. "She was 6 years old. Prettiest little thing you ever saw. Had her mama's eyes and her daddy's stubborn streak." He fell silent. Clara waited, barely breathing. "You remind me of her," McAllister said finally. "Not in looks, in spirit. The way you stood up to me yesterday. The way you walked into my study this morning like you owned the place." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Emma was like that. Fearless, stubborn as a mule. "Sir, I ain't finished." McAllister leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "I don't know your story, Clara Whitfield. Don't know where you came from or what you're running from. And frankly, I don't care. What I care about is whether you can do the job." "I can." "This morning suggests you might be right." McAllister stood and walked to the window again. But one good meal don't make a cook. You got 6 more days to prove yourself. Think you can do that?
Yes, sir.
Good. McAllister's voice hardened slightly. Now, about those siblings of yours. The little one, the boy who don't talk. What's his story? Clara hesitated.
Sammy, sir. He's 5. He stopped talking when our daddy left.
Stopped talking?
Yes, sir. Doctor called it nervous shock. Said his mind just shut down the part that makes words.
McAllister was quiet for a long moment. And the others?
Tommy's 10. He thinks he's the man of the family, even though he ain't. Mercy's 8.
She sings when she's scared, makes up songs to keep herself calm. And Lily's 3. She don't understand much of what's happening, which is maybe a blessing. Their father abandoned them? Yes, sir, 6 months ago. And their mother? Dead, sir. Fever took her a year past. McAllister turned to face her. Something in his expression had changed. Softened, maybe. Or just grown weary. You've been taking care of them all by yourself? Yes, sir. For 6 months? Yes, sir. McAllister shook his head slowly. You're 12 years old. Age don't matter when there's work to be done. For a long moment, McAllister just looked at her. Then he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small pouch. Coins clinked inside. Advance on your wages, he said, tossing it to her. Get those children some proper clothes. There's a general store in town, about 5 miles east. Jonas can take you tomorrow. Clara caught the pouch, stunned.
Sir, I can't.
You can, and you will. I won't have anyone working for me looking like ragamuffins. McAllister sat back down and pulled a stack of papers toward him. Now get out. I got work to do. Clara stood on shaky legs.
Thank you, sir, for everything.
McAllister didn't look up. Don't thank me yet. You still got 6 days to prove yourself. Clara left the study with the pouch clutched against her chest, her mind reeling. An advance on wages. Proper clothes for the children. Was this real? Was any of this real? She found her siblings in the small room off the kitchen. Tommy was trying to teach Mercy how to play cards with a deck he'd found somewhere. Sammy sat in the corner, watching. Lily was asleep on the bed, her thumb in her mouth.
Clara!
Mercy jumped up.
Where you been? We was worried. I was talking to Mr. McAllister.
Clara held up the pouch.
He gave us money for clothes.
Tommy's eyes went wide.
Money? How much?
Clara opened the pouch and counted.
Enough for all of us.
New shoes, new dresses, new everything.
New everything?
Mercy's voice came out as a squeak.
Clara, I ain't never had new everything before.
Well, you're about to. Clara knelt down and pulled her sister close.
Things are going to be different now. I promise.
You keep making promises, Tommy said quietly.
What happens when you can't keep them?
Clara looked at her brother, at the doubt in his eyes, the fear he tried so hard to hide. Then I'll die trying, she said, same as always. The afternoon brought dinner preparations, and Clara threw herself into the work with renewed energy. She made a roast that fell apart at the touch of a fork, potatoes whipped with butter and cream, green beans cooked with bacon and onion. The men ate like they'd never seen food before. When they finished, one of them actually stood up and applauded. Miss Clara, he said, his weathered face split into a grin. If the boss don't keep you on, I'll marry you myself. Clara felt her cheeks flush. I'm 12, sir. Then I'll wait. The man winked. Good cooking's worth waiting for. Laughter rippled through the room. For the first time since arriving, Clara felt something loosen in her chest. Maybe this could work. Maybe they could actually belong here.
After dinner, Clara was scrubbing pots when she heard a commotion outside. Raised voices, heavy footsteps. She dried her hands and went to the window. 2 men on horseback had stopped at the gate. Even from this distance, Clara could see the badges pinned to their chests. Lawmen. Her blood turned to ice. "Clara?" Tommy appeared beside her, his face pale. "Clara, is that—" "Get the others." Clara's voice came out steady, despite the terror clawing at her throat. "Take them to the back room. Don't come out, no matter what you hear." "But now, Tommy." Tommy ran. Clara watched as Jonas approached the lawman, watched as words were exchanged,
Watched as one of the men pulled out a piece of paper and unfolded it. A wanted poster. For her. The kitchen door banged open. Clara spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the copper pot. McAllister stood in the doorway, his face carved from stone. "There's men outside asking about a girl who attacked a deputy in Willow Springs," he said. "They got a poster with a pretty good description. Brown hair, 12 years old, traveling with 4 younger children." Clara's heart stopped.
"Sir, I can explain."
"Don't bother." McAllister stepped into the kitchen and closed the door behind him. "I already know the story. Burke's been spreading it all over the territory."
"Then you know I had no choice. They was going to take my family, split us up. I couldn't let them—"
"I know." McAllister's voice cut through her panic. "I know what Burke is. I know what he does to children who end up in his system, and I know what kind of man sends 5 young ones to hell with a clear conscience." Clara stared at him, not daring to breathe. McAllister crossed to the window and looked out at the lawman. "Those men are going to come in here any minute," he said. "They're going to ask if I've seen you. Ask if I'm harboring fugitives."
"Sir, if you just tell us where to go, we'll leave. We'll run. You don't have to—"
"Be quiet." Clara's mouth snapped shut. McAllister turned to face her. His gray eyes burned with something she couldn't name. "I lost my family once," he said. "Lost them to fire and fate and a world that don't care about pain. I spent 7 years thinking that was the end, that I'd never feel anything again." He took a step toward her. "Then you showed up. You and those children. And for the first time in 7 years, this house feels like something other than a grave." Clara felt tears burning in her eyes. "Sir, I ain't letting them take you." McAllister's voice was fierce, absolute. "I ain't letting them split up your family the way death split up mine. You understand?" A knock at the front door echoed through the house. McAllister straightened his shoulders. "Stay here. Stay quiet. Let me handle this." He walked out of the kitchen without looking back. Clara pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding so loud she was certain the lawmen could hear it. Through the thin walls, she could hear voices, McAllister's deep rumble, the higher, sharper tones of the lawmen. "Looking for 5 children, runaways. Ain't no runaways here, just me and my hired hands. Mind if we take a look around?" "Actually, I do mind. This is my property. You got a warrant?" A long pause. "No, sir, but—" "Then I suggest you get off my land before I exercise my God-given right to defend it." Another pause, longer this time. "This ain't over, McAllister. Sheriff Burke wants those children. He'll get them one way or another. You tell Burke he's welcome to try, but if he sets foot on my property, he'll be leaving in a pine box." Footsteps. The front door slamming. Horses whinnying. Then the sound of hooves fading into the distance. Clara didn't move, didn't breathe. The kitchen door opened. McAllister stood there, his face unreadable. "They're gone," he said. "For now." Clara's legs gave out. She slid down the wall, tears streaming down her face. "Why?"
she whispered. "Why would you do that for us?" McAllister crossed the kitchen and crouched down in front of her. Up close, she could see the lines on his face, the weariness in his eyes, the weight of 7 years of grief. "Because my Emma would have wanted me to," he said quietly. "Because Mary Ellen would have taken you in without a second thought. And because—" he paused, his voice catching. "Because maybe saving your family is the only way I can make peace with losing mine."
Clara reached out and took his hand, calloused skin against small fingers.
"Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you."
McAllister's jaw tightened. For a moment, Clara thought he might pull away. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "Burke ain't the type to give up easy. This is just the beginning." Clara wiped her eyes with the back of her free hand.
"Then we'll fight," she said. "Together."
McAllister looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, the ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Together," he agreed. The days that followed settled into a rhythm Clara hadn't known since Mama was alive. She woke before dawn, cooked breakfast, cleaned, prepared dinner, cleaned again, made supper, and collapsed into bed with her siblings piled around her like puppies seeking warmth. It was exhausting. It was wonderful. On the third morning, Mercy wandered into the kitchen while Clara was kneading bread dough.
"Can I help?" Clara looked at her sister's eager face, at the flour already dusting her freckled nose from hovering too close. "You want to learn how to make bread?"
Mercy nodded so hard her braids bounced.
"I want to cook like you, Clara. I want to make food that makes people happy."
Clara's heart swelled. She pulled a stool over to the work table and lifted Mercy onto it.
"First thing you gotta know,"
Clara said, guiding her sister's small hands into the dough,
"is that bread ain't just flour and water. It's love. You gotta put your whole heart into it, or folks can taste the difference." "How can they taste love?" "Same way they can taste when something's missing."
Clara pressed Mercy's palms into the soft dough.
"Push down, then fold. Push down, then fold. Feel how it gives under your hands?"
Mercy giggled.
"It's squishy. That's the yeast working. It's alive, just like us. You treat it right, it'll rise up beautiful. You treat it wrong, it'll fall flat."
"Like people?" Clara paused, struck by the wisdom in her 8-year-old sister's words.
"Yeah,"
she said softly. "Exactly like people." They worked together in comfortable silence, Mercy's small hands mimicking Clara's movements. By the time the sun fully rose, 2 loaves sat rising near the stove, and Mercy's face was covered in flour.
"I did it," Mercy crowed. "I made bread."
"You sure did," Clara kissed her sister's forehead. "Now go wash up before the men see you looking like a ghost." Mercy scampered off, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts. She stared at the rising dough, her mind drifting to the lawmen who'd come 3 days ago. McAllister had turned them away, but Clara knew they'd be back. Burke wasn't the type to let things go. She was still lost in thought when a shadow fell across the doorway. "Smells good in here." Clara looked up. McAllister stood at the threshold, his hat in his hands. He looked different today, less closed off, almost hesitant.
"Thank you, sir. Bread should be ready by dinner."
"I ain't here about the bread." McAllister stepped into the kitchen, then stopped, as if unsure whether he was welcome. "I wanted to talk to you. About the children." Clara's stomach tightened.
"Is something wrong?"
"No, nothing's wrong." McAllister rubbed the back of his neck. "It's just, Jonas tells me the little ones have been cooped up in that back room for 3 days. Ain't right for children to be locked away like prisoners."
"I told them to stay out of your way, sir, like you said."
"I know what I said." McAllister's jaw tightened. "I'm saying something different now." Clara waited, not daring to hope.
There's a meadow behind the east barn, McAllister continued. Good grass, shade trees, a creek running through it. I used to take... He stopped, his voice catching. I used to take Emma there. She'd catch frogs and bring them home in her pockets. Drove Mary Ellen half mad. Clara felt tears prick her eyes.
She blinked them back. The children can play there, McAllister said. Long as they don't bother the cattle or get in the men's way. Understood? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. McAllister nodded once and turned to leave. Then he paused. That boy, Sammy, he still ain't talking? No, sir. Bring him to me this afternoon. I got something might help. Before Clara could ask what he meant, McAllister was gone. She found out 3 hours later, when she brought Sammy to the main house as instructed. McAllister was waiting on the front porch, and beside him sat the most beautiful horse Clara had ever seen. Chestnut coat gleaming in the sunlight, white blaze down its nose, eyes dark and gentle. This is Molly, McAllister said, as Clara and Sammy approached. She was Emma's horse. Ain't been ridden since... He cleared his throat. She's gentle as a lamb, good with children. Sammy had stopped walking. His eyes were fixed on the horse, wider than Clara had ever seen them. Go on, McAllister said gruffly. You can pet her. She won't bite. Sammy looked up at Clara, a question in his silent gaze. It's okay, sweetheart. Clara gently pushed him forward. Go say hello. Sammy took one step, then another. Molly lowered her head, her soft nose reaching toward the small boy. Sammy's hand trembled as he raised it, his fingers brushing against the horse's velvety muzzle. Molly nickered softly, and Sammy smiled. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. It was the first time she'd seen her brother smile in 6 months. The first time she'd seen anything but emptiness in his eyes. Well, I'll be damned, McAllister breathed. Would you look at that? Sammy pressed his forehead against Molly's nose, his small shoulders shaking. Clara couldn't tell if he was laughing or crying. Maybe both. Can he ride her? Clara asked, her voice thick with emotion. That's the idea. McAllister moved to Sammy's side and crouched down to the boy's level. What do you say, son? Want to go for a ride? Sammy looked at McAllister. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Sammy nodded. McAllister lifted the boy onto Molly's back with surprising gentleness. Sammy's hands immediately tangled in the horse's mane, his face transformed with wonder. Hold on tight, McAllister said. I'm going to walk her around the paddock, nice and slow. Clara watched as McAllister led Molly in a wide circle. Sammy perched on her back like he'd been born there. The boy's eyes were bright, alive, present in a way they hadn't been since before Daddy left. He's good with horses. Clara turned. Jonas had appeared beside her, watching the scene with a strange expression. Sammy? The boss, Jonas nodded toward McAllister. Ain't seen him like this in years. Patient, gentle. He shook his head slowly. You children are doing something to him. Something I didn't think was possible. What's that? Bringing him back to life. Clara didn't know what to say to that. She turned back to watch Sammy ride, her heart full to bursting. That night, something miraculous happened. The children were gathered in the small room after supper, Clara brushing out Lily's tangled curls, while Mercy told one of her made-up stories. Tommy sat in the corner, whittling a piece of wood Jonas had given him. And Sammy sat in the middle of the floor, his eyes still bright from his ride. The horse, he said. Clara's hands froze. Mercy stopped talking. Tommy's knife slipped from his fingers. What did you say? Clara whispered. Sammy looked up at her. The horse, he repeated, his voice rusty from months of disuse. Her name is Molly. Then he smiled again, and Clara burst into tears.
She gathered him in her arms, rocking him back and forth, while Mercy and Lily piled on top of them, and Tommy stood to the side, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand and pretending he wasn't crying.
You talked,
Clara sobbed.
Sammy, you talked.
Molly, Sammy said again, like he was testing the word. I like Molly.
I know you do, sweetheart. I know you do.
They stayed like that for a long time, a pile of children holding each other, laughing and crying all at once. Clara didn't know what the future held, didn't know if Burke would come back, if they'd be safe, if any of this would last. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Her family was together. Sammy was talking. And for the first time in 6 months, Clara felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. The next morning, Clara told McAllister what had happened. He was sitting at his desk when she knocked, papers spread before him like always. But when Clara told him about Sammy, about the word he'd spoken, about the tears and the laughter, McAllister's face changed. He talked?
Yes, sir. Said Molly's name. Said he liked her.
McAllister sat back in his chair, his hand pressed over his eyes. His shoulders were shaking.
Sir, are you all right?
Fine. His voice came out rough, broken. I'm fine. Just give me a minute.
Clara waited. She watched as McAllister pulled himself together, as he wiped his eyes and straightened his spine and became the granite-faced rancher again. But she'd seen beneath the mask now. She knew what was underneath. The boy can ride Molly whenever he wants, McAllister said finally, long as there's someone to supervise him.
Thank you, sir.
And Clara, McAllister met her eyes. Stop calling me sir. Makes me feel old.
What should I call you?
McAllister hesitated. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or longing. Zeke, he said quietly. My name is Zeke. From that day forward, everything changed. Zeke started appearing at meals, something Jonas said he hadn't done in years. He sat at the head of the table, eating Clara's food alongside his men, occasionally offering gruff compliments that made Clara glow with pride.
He taught Tommy how to ride properly, how to rope a calf, how to read the weather by the clouds. The boy blossomed under the attention, his sullen defiance melting into eager determination. He let Mercy sing at supper, even though her songs were silly and made up, and sometimes went on too long. The men loved it. They'd stomp their feet and clap along, their weathered faces split into grins. He held Lily on his lap while Clara cooked, bouncing her on his knee and making faces that sent her into fits of giggles. The 3-year-old had taken to calling him Z, which she couldn't quite pronounce, so it came out sounding like C. And Sammy. Sammy followed Zeke everywhere, a small shadow trailing the big man across the ranch. He didn't talk much, just a word here and there, but his eyes were alive now, present, whole. Clara watched it all unfold with a mixture of joy and terror. Joy because her family was healing. Terror because she knew it couldn't last. Burke was still out there. The wanted posters were still circulating, and every day that passed was another day closer to the moment when their fragile happiness would shatter. On the 7th day, Clara's trial period officially ended. She was preparing breakfast when Zeke appeared in the kitchen doorway. "We need to talk," he said. Clara's hands stilled on the biscuit dough.
Yes, sir. I mean, Zeke.
It's been a week.
I know.
The food's been good. Better than good. Zeke crossed his arms, his face unreadable. The men are happier than I've seen them in years. Productivity's up. Morale's up. Even Jonas is smiling. And that man ain't smiled since the war. Clara held her breath. So here's what I'm thinking, Zeke continued. Forget the trial period. I want you to stay. Permanently.
All 5 of you." The words hit Clara like a physical force. Her knees went weak, and she had to grab the table to keep from falling. "You mean it?" "I don't say things I don't mean." Zeke uncrossed his arms and took a step toward her. "This ranch needs a cook. Those children need a home. And I—" He paused, his jaw working. "I need a reason to keep getting up in the morning." Clara felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't bother wiping them away. "But there's something else," Zeke said. "Something we need to discuss." Clara's joy curdled into fear. "What is it?" "Burke ain't gonna stop. You know that. He's got the law on his side, even if that law is crooked as a snake. As long as those children are legally unattached, he can swoop in any time and take them." "Then what do we do?" Zeke was quiet for a long moment. His gray eyes, usually so hard, had gone soft with something Clara couldn't name. "I want to adopt them," he said. "All of them. Make them legally mine. Burke can't touch children with a legal guardian. He'd have to go through the courts, and no judge in the territory would take children from a man with my standing." Clara stared at him.
"You want to adopt us?"
"Not you." Zeke's voice was gentle but firm. "You're 12 years old, Clara. Too old for adoption in the eyes of the law. But the others, Mercy, Tommy, Sammy, Lily, I can give them my name. Give them protection. Give them a future." Clara's mind was spinning. Adoption, legal protection, a future. "What about me?" Zeke's expression shifted. "That's the complicated part. The law don't allow a single man to be guardian of a near-grown girl. It's improper, they say." Clara felt something cold settle in her stomach. "So, I'd have to leave?" "No." Zeke's voice was fierce. "That ain't what I'm saying. There's another way. A woman in town, Widow Harrison. She's a good woman, respectable. She's agreed to be your legal guardian, on paper. You'd still live here, still work here, still be with your siblings. But legally, you'd be her ward." "You've already talked to her?" "I've been planning this since the day those lawmen came to my door." Zeke met Clara's eyes. "I meant what I said, Clara. I ain't letting them take your family. Not while I'm breathing." Clara couldn't speak. The tears were coming too fast now, blurring her vision, choking her voice. "Why?" she finally managed. "Why would you do all this for us? We're nobody. We're just—" "You're not nobody." Zeke crossed the remaining distance between them and crouched down to her level. "You're Clara Whitfield, the bravest girl I ever met. You walked through hell to keep your family together. You hit a lawman with a cooking pot and never looked back. You showed up at my door with nothing but nerve and a prayer, and you changed everything." He reached out and took her hand. His palm was rough, calloused from years of hard work, but his grip was gentle. "You saved me, Clara. You and those children. You gave me something to live for again." His voice broke. "Let me save you back." Clara threw her arms around him. Zeke stiffened, just for a moment. Then his arms came up, wrapping around her small frame, holding her like she was something precious, something worth protecting. "Thank you," Clara sobbed into his shoulder. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "You're welcome," Zeke said gruffly. "Now stop crying and finish those biscuits. Men gotta eat." Clara laughed through her tears and pulled back, wiping her face with her apron. "Yes, sir." "What did I tell you about calling me that?" "Sorry, Zeke." He nodded once and turned to leave. Then he paused in the doorway. "Clara?" "Yes?" "I know I ain't your daddy. I ain't trying to replace him. But if you ever need anything, advice or protection or just someone to talk to, I'm here." Understand? Clara smiled, her heart so full it ached.
I understand.
Zeke left, and Clara returned to her biscuits with renewed energy. Everything was going to be okay. They were going to have a home, a real home. Her siblings would have a father. They would be safe.
She was so lost in her happy thoughts that she almost didn't hear the commotion outside. Almost. Shouts, running footsteps, a woman's scream. Clara ran to the window and felt her blood turn to ice. A group of riders had gathered at the ranch gates. 6 men, maybe 7, all of them armed. And at their head, his badge gleaming in the morning sun, sat Sheriff Thaddeus Burke. But that wasn't what made Clara's heart stop. It was the woman on the horse beside him. Gray-haired, stern-faced, dressed in black from head to toe. Mrs. Prudence Ashworth, superintendent of the Helena Orphan Asylum. They'd come for the children. Clara spun away from the window and ran. Through the kitchen, through the back room, grabbing Sammy by the hand and shouting for the others.
Tommy, Mercy, get Lily. We have to go.
What's happening? Tommy was on his feet, his face pale.
Burke's here, and he brought someone from the orphanage.
Mercy's eyes went wide with terror.
The orphanage? Clara, no.
No, you promised. You said they wouldn't take us. And I meant it. Clara grabbed her copper pot, the only weapon she had. Tommy, take the others out the back window. Head for the creek. Hide in the trees until I come for you. I ain't leaving you. You'll do what I tell you. Clara's voice cracked like a whip. Those babies need you more than they need me. Now go! Tommy hesitated, his face twisted with anguish. Then he grabbed Sammy's hand and lifted Lily into his arms. Mercy, come on. But Clara, go! Clara watched her siblings climb through the window and disappear into the morning mist. Her heart was breaking, but there was no time for tears. She had to buy them time. She marched out the front door and into the yard. Burke was already dismounting, a smug smile on his weathered face. Mrs. Ashworth remained on her horse, her expression as cold as winter stone. Well, well, Burke straightened his gun belt. The little murderess herself. I ain't murdered nobody. Deputy Horace would disagree. Oh, wait. Burke's smile widened. He can't disagree. On account of the brain damage. Clara felt sick. Is he alive? Barely. Can't walk, can't talk, can't do much of anything except drool and stare at the ceiling. Burke took a step toward her. That's on you, girl. That's your doing. He was trying to hurt my family. He was doing his job. Burke's voice rose to a roar. And now I'm doing mine. Where are the other children? Gone. Burke's face went red. What do you mean, gone? I mean gone. Run off. You'll never find them. Burke's hand shot out, grabbing Clara by the collar and lifting her off her feet. Listen here, you little bitch. I've had enough of your games. Those children are property of the state, and I aim to collect them. Now tell me where they are, or I swear to God, put her down. The voice was quiet, calm, deadly. Burke turned, Clara still dangling from his fist. Zeke stood on the porch of the main house, a rifle cradled in his arms. Behind him, Jonas and half a dozen ranch hands had appeared, all of them armed. I said put her down, Burke. I won't say it again. Burke's grip tightened. This ain't your concern, McAllister. This girl is a wanted fugitive. Those children are wards of the state. I got every right. You got no rights on my land. Zeke raised the rifle. Now let go of the girl, or I'll put a bullet between your eyes. You're threatening a lawman. I'm defending my property. Zeke's voice was ice. And my family. The words hung in the air. Burke's face went from red to purple. Your family? He laughed.
ugly and harsh. "Since when do you have family, McAllister? Thought the fire took care of that." Clara felt Zeke's rage like a physical force, felt it vibrating through the air between them. "Last warning, Burke." Zeke's finger moved to the trigger. "Put her down." For a long, terrible moment, nobody moved.
Then Burke dropped Clara like she was garbage. She hit the ground hard, the breath knocked out of her. But she didn't stay down. She scrambled to her feet and ran to Zeke's side, positioning herself behind him. "This ain't over," Burke snarled. "I got papers. Legal papers. Mrs. Ashworth here represents the Helena Orphan Asylum. Those children are going with us, one way or another." Mrs. Ashworth finally spoke, her voice thin and reedy.
"Mr. McAllister, I understand your attachment to these unfortunate waifs. But the law is clear. Orphan children must be placed in proper institutions where they can receive appropriate care and Christian guidance."
"Those children have care." Zeke's rifle didn't waver. "They have guidance. And as of this morning, they have a father." Burke snorted. "What are you talking about?" "I filed adoption papers 3 days ago. Judge Morrison approved them yesterday." Zeke reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded document.
Thomas, Mercy, Samuel, and Lily Whitfield are now legally my children, my heirs, my blood in the eyes of the law. Clara's breath caught. 3 days ago, he'd started the process before he even told her. Burke's face had gone white. That's not possible. You can't just—" "I can, and I did." Zeke tossed the document at Burke's feet. "Read it yourself. Signed, sealed, and witnessed. Those children belong to me now. You want to take them? You go through the courts. And I promise you, Burke, I got better lawyers than you got deputies." Mrs. Ashworth's thin face had pinched even tighter.
"And what about the girl? Clara, the one who assaulted an officer of the law?"
"Clara Whitfield is a ward of Widow Harrison, legal and proper. She works for me as a domestic employee. Any attempt to remove her will be met with the full force of my legal team." Zeke lowered his rifle slightly. "Face it, Burke. You lost. Now get off my land before I forget I'm a civilized man."
Burke stood there, shaking with rage. His hand hovered over his pistol. "Go ahead," Zeke said softly. "Draw. Give me a reason." The moment stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Then Burke's hand dropped to his side. "This ain't over," he hissed. "You think some papers are going to protect you? You think the law's going to be on your side forever? I'm going to find a way to take those children. I'm going to find a way to make you pay for humiliating me." "You're welcome to try." Zeke raised his rifle again. "Now get off my property. You got 10 seconds. Burke mounted his horse, his movements jerky with fury. Mrs. Ashworth followed, her face pinched with disapproval. 10, Zeke counted. 9, 8. The riders wheeled their horses and galloped toward the gates. 7, 6, 5. They passed through the gates and disappeared down the road. 4, 3, 2. Silence fell over the ranch. 1. Zeke lowered his rifle. His shoulders sagged. Clara realized he'd been trembling the whole time. "Zeke?" She touched his arm. "Are you okay?" He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw tears in his eyes. "Go get your siblings," he said hoarsely. "Bring them home." Home. Clara ran. She found them huddled in the trees by the creek, just like she'd told them. Tommy was standing guard with a stick, ready to fight the whole world. Mercy was singing softly to Lily, trying to keep the toddler calm. And Sammy was crouched at the edge of the water, watching the minnows swim. "Clara!"
Mercy spotted her first and launched herself into her sister's arms. "Clara, what happened? Are the bad men gone?" "They're gone, sweetheart. They're gone." Clara gathered all of them close, breathing in the scent of her family. "And they're not coming back." "How do you know?" Tommy's voice was suspicious, guarded. Clara smiled through her tears. "Because we have a father now," she said. "A real one.
One who'll protect us no matter what." Tommy stared at her. "McAllister?" "Zeke." Clara took her brother's hand. "His name is Zeke, and he's family now, just like us." They walked back to the ranch together. 5 children who'd been homeless and hunted, who'd been abandoned and afraid. But they weren't homeless anymore. They weren't hunted. They were home. And standing on the porch, waiting for them with tears on his weathered cheeks, was the man who'd given them that home. Their father. 3 weeks passed, and for the first time in her life, Clara Whitfield knew what peace felt like. She woke each morning to the smell of wood smoke and the sound of cattle lowing in the distance. She cooked meals that made grown men smile. She watched her siblings blossom under Zeke's gruff but tender care, watched the shadows fade from their eyes, watched them become children again instead of survivors. Tommy had grown 2 inches, it seemed, fed on good food and purpose. He spent his days learning the ranch alongside Jonas, coming home each evening exhausted and proud, talking about horses and cattle and the ways of the land. Mercy sang constantly now, her voice ringing through the house like bells. She'd started teaching Lily the words to her made-up songs, and the 2 of them could often be found in the meadow behind the east barn, dancing in circles and singing to the sky. Sammy talked more each day. Not a lot, not like before, but enough. He followed Zeke like a shadow, and Zeke let him. Clara would catch them sometimes, the big man and the small boy, sitting side by side on the porch rail, not speaking, just being together. And Lily. Sweet, sunny Lily had claimed Zeke as her own. She called him Z and demanded to sit on his lap at every meal. And Zeke, who had once declared he didn't want to see or hear the children, now carved wooden animals for her at night and tucked her into bed with stories about a little girl named Emma who lived among the stars. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was close. So close that Clara sometimes forgot to be afraid. That was her first mistake. The trouble started on a Tuesday, 3 weeks and 2 days after Burke's retreat. Clara was kneading bread dough when Jonas burst through the kitchen door, his face pale beneath his weathered tan. "Where's the boss?" Clara's hands stilled. "In his study. Why? What's wrong?" Jonas was already moving. "Rustlers hit the north pasture last night. Took about 30 head. 30 head? Clara wiped her hands on her apron and followed him. "That's a lot of money and a lot of trouble." Jonas knocked on Zeke's study door without waiting for permission. "Boss, we got a problem." The next hour was chaos. Zeke assembled a posse of his best men, armed them, and prepared to ride out after the rustlers. Clara watched from the porch, her heart tight with worry. "Be careful," she said, as Zeke mounted his horse. He looked down at her, his gray eyes soft. "Always am." "That ain't true, and we both know it." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Keep the children close. Lock the doors at night. Jonas is staying behind with 4 men. Anyone comes to the gate that ain't me or mine, you don't let them in. Understood?" "Understood." Zeke hesitated, like he wanted to say something more. Then he simply nodded and spurred his horse forward, leading his men down the road and out of sight. Clara stood on the porch until the dust settled, a cold feeling creeping into her bones. Something was wrong. She could feel it. She just didn't know what.
The answer came 3 days later, in the middle of the night. Clara woke to screaming.
She was on her feet before her eyes were fully open, her body moving on pure instinct. The screaming was coming from outside, high and terrified, and beneath it she could hear another sound. Crackling. Roaring. Fire. Clara ran to the window and felt her heart stop. The main barn was ablaze. Flames licked at the wooden walls, climbing higher and higher, painting the night sky orange and red. Men ran back and forth with buckets, shouting, but the fire was spreading too fast. "Clara?" Tommy appeared in the doorway, his face white with fear. "Clara, what's happening?" "Get your sisters and brother. Get them to the root cellar. Don't come out until I come for you." "But now, Tommy!" Clara grabbed her shawl and ran outside. The heat hit her like a wall, stealing her breath. She could see Jonas organizing the bucket brigade, could hear him shouting orders over the roar of the flames. "Clara!" Jonas spotted her and waved her back. "Get inside! This ain't safe!" Where did it start? Don't know. Went up like someone poured kerosene on it. Jonas's face was grim. "We're losing the battle here. If the wind shifts, the whole ranch could go." Clara's blood ran cold. The whole ranch. The house. Her family. "What can I do?" "Pray," Jonas said, "and stay out of the way." But Clara couldn't stay out of the way. Couldn't stand there doing nothing while everything they'd built burned to ash. She grabbed a bucket and joined the line, passing water from hand to hand, her arms screaming with the effort. The fire fought back. For every bucket they threw, the flames seemed to grow stronger, hungrier. Clara could feel the heat blistering her skin, could taste smoke in the back of her throat. Then she heard it, a sound that made her heart stop. Neighing. Terrified, desperate neighing. Molly. Molly was still in her stall, the stall that was attached to the burning barn. Clara dropped her bucket and ran. "Clara!" Jonas's voice followed her.
"Clara, no, stop!"
She didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Sammy loved that horse. That horse had given him his voice back. She couldn't let Molly burn. The heat intensified as she got closer, but Clara pushed through. She found the stable door and yanked it open, smoke billowing out in thick black clouds. She pulled her shawl over her face and plunged inside. "Molly! Molly, where are you?" A whinny answered her, high and panicked. Clara followed the sound, her eyes streaming, her lungs burning. She found Molly in the last stall, rearing and kicking at the walls, wild with terror. "Easy, girl, easy." Clara fumbled with the latch, her fingers clumsy from fear. "I'm gonna get you out. Just hold on." The latch gave. The door swung open. Molly bolted past Clara, nearly knocking her down, and thundered toward the exit. Clara tried to follow, but her legs gave out. The smoke was too thick. She couldn't breathe, couldn't see. She fell to her knees, gasping. "This is it," she thought. "This is how I die." Then strong arms grabbed her, lifted her, carried her out into the night air. She blinked up through streaming eyes and saw Zeke's face above her, his expression twisted with fear and fury. "Zeke?" Her voice came out as a croak. "You came back." "Rustlers were a diversion." Zeke's arms tightened around her. "Sent us on a wild goose chase so they could... He couldn't finish. He was staring at the burning barn, and Clara saw something in his eyes that terrified her more than the flames. Recognition. Memory. Trauma. "Zeke?" Clara grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "Zeke, stay with me. Don't go back there. Stay here." The fire. His voice had gone strange, distant.
Mary Ellen was... Emma was... I know, Zeke, but that was then. This is now.
Clara's hands trembled against his cheeks.
I'm here. The children are safe. We're all safe. Look at me. Look at me.
Zeke's eyes focused slowly, painfully.
He looked at Clara like he was seeing her for the first time. Clara?
I'm here. I'm right here.
You went into the fire.
I had to save Molly. Sammy loves that horse. You could have died. Zeke's voice cracked. You could have died like... But I didn't. Clara managed a weak smile. Takes more than a little fire to kill a Whitfield.
Zeke made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. He pulled Clara close, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "Don't ever do that again," he said into her hair. "Don't ever scare me like that again."
I won't. I promise.
They held each other while the barn burned, while men shouted and water flew and the night sky glowed orange. And when the flames finally died down, when the barn was nothing but smoldering ruins, they were still holding on. Dawn revealed the full extent of the damage. The main barn was destroyed. The stable had survived, barely, thanks to Clara's quick action.
3 horses had been lost, trapped in stalls no one could reach. The hay stores were gone, and with them half the feed for the winter. But no one had died. No people, anyway. And that was when they found the evidence. Jonas brought it to Zeke while Clara was serving breakfast to the exhausted firefighters. A kerosene can, half empty, found behind the barn, and a piece of paper, singed at the edges but still readable. A note. "This is just the beginning. Give up the children, or next time it'll be the house." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. Burke. Has to be. Zeke's hands were shaking, not with fear, with rage. Couldn't get the children legal, so he's trying to burn us out. Can't we take this to the law? Burke is the law around here. Jonas spat on the ground. Ain't nobody gonna take our word over his. Then what do we do? Zeke was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was cold as winter. We end this. How? I'm going to town. Gonna pay Sheriff Burke a visit. Zeke reached for his gun belt. Man to man. Zeke, no. Clara grabbed his arm. That's exactly what he wants. You go in there guns blazing, he'll have every right to shoot you down. Then what happens to us? What happens to the children? So what do you suggest? We wait for him to burn down the house with all of you inside? We fight smart. Clara's mind was racing. Burke wants something. There's got to be a reason he's so set on getting those children. What is it? What's he after? Jonas cleared his throat. There's rumors. Nothing solid, but... What rumors? Burke's been running a scheme with the orphanages. Takes in kids as wards of the state. Then sells them off to mines and factories as cheap labor. Gets a cut of whatever the kids earn. Jonas's face twisted with disgust. It's illegal, but nobody can prove nothing. Clara felt sick. He wanted to sell my siblings? 4 healthy children? That's a lot of money. Jonas shook his head. You cost him a small fortune when you got away, Miss Clara. That's why he's so riled. Then we expose him. Clara's voice was fierce. We find proof. We show people what he really is. How? Zeke demanded. Burke's been running this scheme for years. If there was proof, someone would have found it by now. Maybe they weren't looking in the right places. Clara thought about Mrs. Ashworth, the woman from the orphanage, about the way she'd looked at the children, like they were livestock instead of human beings. The orphanage. Mrs. Ashworth. She's part of it. She has to be. If we can get someone inside, get them to talk. That's a dangerous game, Clara.
Living is a dangerous game. Clara met Zeke's eyes. You taught me that. Zeke stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. All right, we do this your way. But I'm not sitting on my hands while you play detective. He turned to Jonas. Double the guards, day and night.
Anyone approaches this ranch who ain't invited, you shoot first and ask questions later. Yes, boss. And Jonas? Zeke's voice hardened. If anything happens to these children while I'm dealing with Burke, I'll hold you personally responsible. Understood. Clara spent the next 2 days planning. She sent word to Widow Harrison, the woman who was her legal guardian on paper, asking for help. The widow had connections in Helena, friends who might know something about Mrs. Ashworth and her dealings. She talked to the ranch hands, asking about Burke, about rumors they'd heard, about anything that might be useful. One of them, a young man named Pete, remembered something. I had a cousin, Pete said, his voice low. She got sent to the Helena Orphan Asylum about 5 years back. Pretty little thing, sweet as sugar. Never saw her again. What happened to her? Nobody knows. Asylum says she got adopted by a good family. But my aunt wrote to that family, and they said they never heard of her. Pete's jaw tightened. She just disappeared. Clara filed the information away. On the third day, Widow Harrison arrived at the ranch with news. Mrs. Ashworth keeps records, the widow said. She was a small woman, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, with a spine of pure steel. Every child that comes through her asylum, she logs their name, where they came from, and where they went. Those records are locked in her office. Can we get to them? Not legally, but... The widow hesitated. I know someone. A woman who works at the asylum. She's been suspicious of Mrs. Ashworth for years. If we can convince her to help, do it. Clara didn't hesitate. Whatever it takes. It's risky, Clara. If we're caught, then we'll deal with it. Clara's voice was hard. Burke burned our barn. He threatened to burn our house. He wants to sell children into slavery. I ain't gonna sit here and let him win. The widow studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled, small and fierce. Your mama would be proud of you. Clara's throat tightened. You knew my mama? I knew of her. Everyone did. Elizabeth Whitfield was a legend in these parts. Best cook in 3 counties, they said, and stubborn as a mule. The widow reached out and touched Clara's cheek. You're her daughter, through and through. That night, Clara lay awake long after the others had fallen asleep. Mama would be proud. The words echoed in her mind, filling her with warmth and pain in equal measure. She wondered what Mama would think of all this, of the ranch, of Zeke, of the danger they faced. She would tell me to fight, Clara thought. She would tell me to protect my family no matter what. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. A week later, everything fell into place. The woman from the asylum, a young nurse named Rebecca, agreed to help. She smuggled out copies of Mrs. Ashworth's records, pages and pages of names and dates and destinations. The evidence was damning. Over the past 10 years, more than 60 children had passed through the Helena Orphan Asylum. Of those 60, only 12 had been legitimately adopted. The rest had been transferred to mines in Montana, factories in the east, even farms down south that were little better than slave plantations. And every transfer bore Burke's signature. We got him, Clara breathed, staring at the papers spread across Zeke's desk. We actually got him. Not yet. Zeke's face was grim. Burke's got friends in high places. We take this to the local judge, he'll bury it. We need someone bigger. Someone Burke can't touch. The governor? Maybe. Zeke rubbed his chin. I know a man in Helena, federal marshal. Owes me a favor from way back.
If I can get these papers to him.
Then let's do it.
It ain't that simple. Zeke met her eyes. Burke's been watching the ranch.
We try to leave. He'll know. He'll either stop us or do something worse. Clara felt cold fingers wrap around her heart. The children. He knows he can't beat us head on. But if he threatens the children while I'm gone. Zeke's hands clenched into fists. I won't leave them unprotected.
Then I'll go.
The words were out before Clara could stop them. Zeke's head snapped up.
What? I'll take the papers to Helena. Burke's watching you, not me. He thinks I'm just a cook, a child.
Clara's chin lifted.
Let him keep thinking that.
Absolutely not. It's too dangerous.
Everything is dangerous.
Clara stepped closer, her voice fierce.
You said it yourself. You can't leave the ranch. Jonas can't be spared. Who else is there? One of the hands? Burke knows all their faces. I'm the only one who can do this.
Clara.
Zeke.
She reached out and took his hand.
You took us in when nobody else would. You gave us a home, a family, a future. Let me do this for you.
Let me fight. Zeke stared at her, his gray eyes churning with emotion. Fear. Pride. Love. You're 12 years old, he said hoarsely. I stopped being 12 the day Mama died. Clara squeezed his hand. You know that. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Zeke pulled her into a fierce embrace. You come back, he said into her hair. You hear me? You do what needs to be done, and you come back.
I will.
Promise me. Clara pulled back and looked him in the eye.
I promise.
The plan was simple. Clara would leave at midnight, traveling light and fast on one of the ranch's fastest horses. She'd take the back trails, avoiding the main roads where Burke might have men watching. If all went well, she'd reach Helena by dawn, deliver the papers to the federal marshal, and be back at the ranch before anyone knew she was gone. If all went well. Clara spent the afternoon saying goodbye to her siblings, though she couldn't tell them why. She braided Mercy's hair and told her to be good. She held Lily close and breathed in the sweet scent of her baby sister's skin. She found Tommy practicing his roping and told him to look after the others while she was gone. Gone where? Tommy's eyes narrowed with suspicion.
Just an errand. I'll be back before you know it.
Clara! Tommy grabbed her arm.
Whatever you're doing, take me with you. I can't.
Why not?
Because someone needs to stay here.
Clara cupped her brother's face in her hands.
If something goes wrong, if I don't come back,
don't talk like that.
If I don't come back, Clara continued firmly, you're the oldest. You protect them. You keep them together. Promise me.
Tommy's eyes glistened.
I promise. But Clara, you have to come back. You have to. I will.
She found Sammy in the stable with Molly, brushing the horse's chestnut coat with careful, loving strokes.
Hey, sweetheart.
Sammy looked up. His dark eyes studied her face, and Clara had the strange feeling he knew exactly what she was planning. You're leaving, he said quietly. Clara's heart clenched.
Just for a little while. The bad man wants to hurt us. Yes, but I won't let him.
Sammy set down the brush and walked over to her. He reached up and touched her cheek, the same gesture she'd made to him 100 times.
Be safe, he said. Come home.
Clara pulled him close, breathing in the scent of hay and horse and little boy.
I will, Sammy. I promise.
Midnight came faster than she expected. Clara stood in the yard, dressed in Tommy's old clothes, her hair tucked under a cap. In the darkness,
She could pass for a boy. Just another ranch hand, out on an errand. Zeke held her horse's reins, his face a mask of barely controlled fear. "You remember the route?" "Yes." "And the marshal's name?" "William Thornton, the Silver Star Inn."
If anything looks wrong, if you see anyone suspicious, you turn around and come straight back. You understand?
"I understand." Zeke pulled her into one last embrace. "I love you," he said roughly. "You know that, don't you? You're my daughter now, same as the others, same as Emma ever was." Clara felt tears burning in her eyes.
"I love you too, Papa."
It was the first time she'd called him that. Zeke made a choked sound and held her tighter. Then he let go, helped her into the saddle, and stepped back. "Ride fast," he said. "Ride safe, and come home." Clara gathered the reins and looked down at the man who had saved her family.
"I will," she said. "I promise."
Then she spurred her horse forward and disappeared into the night. The night swallowed Clara whole. She rode hard through the darkness, her heart pounding in rhythm with the horse's hooves. Every shadow seemed to hide danger. Every sound made her flinch. But she didn't slow down, couldn't slow down. The papers were tucked inside her shirt, pressed against her skin. 60 children. 60 lives stolen, sold, destroyed. And the proof of it all resting against her racing heart. She'd been riding for maybe 2 hours when she heard it. Hoofbeats. Behind her. Getting closer. Clara's blood turned to ice. She urged her horse faster, but the animal was already lathered with sweat, already straining at its limits.
"Come on," she whispered. "Just a little further. Please."
The hoofbeats grew louder. Clara risked a glance over her shoulder and saw torchlight flickering through the trees. 2 riders, maybe 3. They'd found her. Clara veered off the trail, plunging into the dense undergrowth. Branches clawed at her face, her arms, her clothes. She ducked low over the horse's neck and kept riding. "There! I see her!" The shout came from her left. Too close. They were too close. Clara's horse stumbled, caught itself, stumbled again. The poor animal was spent.
She couldn't ask any more of it. She made a decision. Clara pulled the horse to a stop, slid from the saddle, and slapped its flank hard.
"Go! Get out of here!"
The horse bolted into the darkness. Clara didn't watch it go. She was already running, her feet pounding against the forest floor, the papers clutched against her chest. Behind her, she heard cursing. Horses crashing through brush. They'd seen the riderless horse. They knew she was on foot. Clara ran faster. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she kept running, kept pushing, kept fighting. She thought about her siblings, about Zeke, about the promise she'd made.
"I will come home. I will."
The ground suddenly disappeared beneath her feet. Clara tumbled down a steep embankment, rocks and roots tearing at her skin. She hit the bottom hard, the breath knocked out of her. For a moment, she just lay there, gasping, staring up at the stars spinning overhead.
"Get up,"
she told herself.
"Get up or die."
She got up.
Her ankle screamed in protest when she put weight on it. Twisted, maybe sprained. She gritted her teeth and kept moving, limping now, slower, but still alive. The voices above her had gone quiet. They'd lost her trail. But it wouldn't last. Come dawn, they'd find her tracks. They'd hunt her down. She had to reach Helena before sunrise. Clara walked through the night, her ankle throbbing, her body aching, her mind focused on one thing and one thing only: the mission, the papers, the children. She thought about the 60 names on those pages, 60 children who'd been ripped from their homes, sold like cattle, worked like slaves.
Some of them were probably dead by now. Others might as well be. But if she could get these papers to the marshal, if she could expose what Burke had done, maybe she could save the ones who were still alive. Maybe she could make sure no other child ever suffered the same fate. It was enough. It had to be enough.
Dawn found her at the edge of Helena, exhausted and limping, but alive. The town was just waking up. Shopkeepers opening their doors, delivery wagons rattling down the streets, early risers heading to work. Clara pulled her cap lower over her face and tried to blend in. The Silver Star Inn. That's what Zeke had said. Marshal William Thornton, the Silver Star Inn. She found it on the main street, a respectable-looking establishment with a painted sign swinging above the door. Clara hesitated outside, suddenly aware of how she must look. Dirty, torn clothes, a limp, a face smeared with blood and grime. She didn't care. Clara pushed through the door and walked straight to the front desk. "I need to see Marshal William Thornton. It's urgent." The clerk, a thin man with spectacles, looked her up and down with obvious distaste. "The marshal isn't receiving visitors." "He'll receive me." Clara pulled the papers from her shirt and slapped them on the desk. Tell him I have evidence of child trafficking. Tell him Sheriff Thaddeus Burke of Willow Springs has been selling orphans to mines and factories for the past 10 years. The clerk's eyes went wide. I beg your pardon?" "You heard me." Clara leaned forward, her voice hard as iron. "Now get the marshal, before I start screaming loud enough for the whole town to hear." 5 minutes later, Clara was sitting in a room on the second floor, facing a man with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. Marshal William Thornton listened without interrupting as Clara told her story. She told him everything. About her mother's death, her father's abandonment, the sheriff's attempt to take her siblings, about Zeke and Stone Creek Ranch, about the fire, the threats, the conspiracy she'd uncovered. When she finished, the marshal picked up the papers and studied them in silence. "These are serious accusations," he said finally. "They're not accusations. They're facts." Clara met his gaze without flinching.
60 children, Marshal. 60 children sold into slavery, and Sheriff Burke signed every transfer.
"I know Thaddeus Burke. He's been sheriff of Willow Springs for 15 years.
And he's been a monster for just as long."
Thornton set down the papers and leaned back in his chair. His eyes searched Clara's face, looking for something. "You're Zeke McAllister's girl, the one he adopted."
"I'm Clara Whitfield, and Zeke didn't adopt me. He adopted my siblings."
"But he sent you here, with these papers."
"He would have come himself, but Burke's watching the ranch. I was the only one who could slip through."
"And you rode all night, evaded Burke's men, and walked the last 5 miles on a sprained ankle." The marshal's voice held a note of wonder. "You're either the bravest girl I've ever met, or the most foolish."
"Maybe both," Clara's voice cracked. "I don't care what happens to me, Marshal. I just need you to stop Burke."
"I need you to save those children." Thornton was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "I've suspected Burke for years," he said quietly. "Never could prove anything. The man covers his tracks too well." He turned to face Clara. "But this is proof. Names, dates, signatures. This is enough to hang him." Clara's heart leaped. "You'll help?" "I'll do more than help." Thornton's eyes hardened. "I'll bring Burke to justice. Him and everyone else involved in this filthy business." He moved to the door and called out, "Deputy, get me 5 men. We're riding to Willow Springs." Clara tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The adrenaline that had kept her going was fading, and exhaustion was crashing over her like a wave. "Easy there,"
Thornton caught her before she fell. "You've done your part, Miss Whitfield. Now let me do mine."
I have to go back. My family.
"We'll still be there when this is over."
Thornton guided her to a chair. "You need rest, food, medical attention for that ankle."
I promised I'd come home.
"And you will. But right now, you're going to stay here, where it's safe." Thornton's voice softened. "You've been brave long enough, Clara. Let someone else carry the burden for a while." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but her body had other ideas. Her eyes were closing against her will, her muscles going slack.
My siblings, she mumbled. Protect them.
"I will. I swear it." It was the last thing Clara heard before the darkness took her. She woke to sunlight streaming through a window and the sound of birds singing outside. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was soft, softer than anything she'd slept on in years. The sheets smelled like lavender, and someone had bandaged her ankle, cleaned her wounds, changed her into a clean nightgown. Then memory came flooding back. Clara sat up so fast her head spun. Burke, the marshal.
"I have to—" "Easy, child, easy." A woman was sitting beside her bed, gray-haired, kind-faced, with gentle hands that pressed Clara back against the pillows. "Who are you?" "Sarah Thornton, the marshal's wife." The woman smiled. "You've been asleep for nearly 2 days."
2 days?
Clara's heart lurched.
My family, the ranch. I have to—
"Your family is fine." Sarah's voice was soothing, firm. "William sent word. Sheriff Burke has been arrested. The children at the orphanage have been freed. And your Mr. McAllister is on his way here to fetch you." Clara stared at her, not quite daring to believe. "Burke's been arrested?" "Arrested, charged, and locked up in the federal prison in Helena, along with Mrs. Ashworth and 3 of his deputies." Sarah's smile widened. "It seems your evidence was quite thorough." "And the children? The ones who were sold?" Sarah's smile faded slightly. "They're working on that. It'll take time to track them all down, but William's already sent telegrams to every territory in the West. They'll find them." Clara felt tears burning in her eyes. She hadn't cried when she fled from Burke, hadn't cried when she rode through the night, hadn't cried when she limped 5 miles on a sprained ankle. But now, finally safe, finally able to breathe, the tears came flooding out. "It's over," she sobbed. "It's really over." Sarah gathered her into a gentle embrace. "It's over, child. You did it. You saved them all." Zeke arrived that evening. Clara heard his voice downstairs, deep and urgent, asking for her. She was out of bed before Sarah could stop her, hobbling down the stairs on her bandaged ankle. He was standing in the front hall, still covered in trail dust, his face haggard with worry. When he saw her, his expression crumpled. "Clara." She threw herself into his arms. They held each other for a long time, neither speaking, just breathing each other in. Clara could feel Zeke's heart pounding against her cheek, could feel the trembling in his strong arms. "I thought I've lost you," he said hoarsely. "When you didn't come back, when Burke's men came to the ranch bragging about how they'd caught you." "They didn't catch me." "I know that now. But for 2 days I thought—" His voice broke. "I thought I'd lost another daughter." Clara pulled back and looked up at him. "You didn't lose me. You'll never lose me." Zeke cupped her face in his rough hands. "You did something incredible, Clara. You saved 60 children. You brought down a corrupt sheriff. You changed everything." "I just delivered some papers." "You did so much more than that." Zeke's eyes glistened. "You showed me what courage looks like, what love looks like, what family looks like." He pressed his forehead against hers.
I'm so proud of you. So damn proud. Clara smiled through her tears. Can we go home now? Yeah. Zeke's voice was rough with emotion.
Let's go home. They rode back to Stone Creek Ranch the next morning, Clara sitting in front of Zeke on his big gray stallion. Marshal Thornton had offered an escort, but Zeke refused. "Don't need protection anymore," he said. "Burke's men have scattered like rats. There's nothing left to fear." The ride took most of the day. Clara dozed against Zeke's chest, exhausted but peaceful. When she woke, they were cresting the final ridge, and Stone Creek Ranch spread out below them. Home. Clara's heart swelled at the sight. The main barn was still a pile of rubble, but new lumber was stacked nearby, ready for rebuilding. Cattle grazed in the pastures. Smoke rose from the chimney of the main house. And standing at the gate, lined up like soldiers waiting for inspection, were 4 small figures. "Clara!" Mercy's shriek carried across the valley. The children broke formation and came running, their legs churning up dust as they sprinted toward the approaching horse. Zeke reined to a stop just as they arrived. Tommy reached them first, his face flushed with exertion and emotion. "You made it," he gasped. "Clara, you actually made it." "Told you I would." Zeke lowered Clara to the ground, and she was immediately engulfed by her siblings. Mercy sobbing into her shoulder, Tommy gripping her hand like he'd never let go, Sammy pressing his face against her stomach, and Lily climbing her like a tree, demanding to be held. "I missed you," Lily declared. "Z said you was coming back, but I didn't believe him." "Well, Z was right." Clara kissed her baby sister's forehead. "I'll always come back. I promised." They walked to the house together, all 6 of them. Jonas and the ranch hands were waiting on the porch, their weathered faces split into grins. "Welcome home, Miss Clara," Jonas said, tipping his hat. "Place ain't been the same without you." "Nobody can cook like Clara," one of the hands added. "We've been eating Jonas's slop for 3 days.
Nearly starved to death. "Hey now," Jonas protested. "My cooking ain't that bad."
"It's pretty bad," Tommy said solemnly, and everyone laughed. That night, Clara cooked dinner for the first time in nearly a week. She made all her family's favorites: biscuits with honey for Zeke, fried chicken for Tommy, mashed potatoes for Mercy, applesauce for Sammy, and a special sugar cookie for Lily, shaped like a horse. They ate together at the big table in the main house, something they'd never done before. The children chattered and laughed, the ranch hands told stories, and Zeke sat at the head of the table, watching it all with a look of quiet wonder on his face. After dinner, when the dishes were washed and the children tucked into bed, Clara found Zeke on the front porch. He was staring out at the stars, a cup of coffee cooling in his hands. "Mind if I join you?" He shifted over, making room for her on the bench. "Couldn't sleep?" Too wound up. Clara settled beside him, pulling her shawl tight against the cool night air. "Keep thinking about everything that happened, everything that could have gone wrong." "But it didn't." "No, it didn't." Clara was quiet for a moment. "Zeke, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When you first saw us at your gate, 5 dirty children begging for work, why did you let us stay? You could have turned us away. Most folks would have." Zeke was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. "When Sammy touched my hand that day, I felt something I hadn't felt in 7 years. Connection. Like maybe I wasn't as dead inside as I thought." He turned to look at her. "And when I looked at you, Clara, standing there with your chin up and your shoulders back, ready to fight the whole world for your family, I saw myself. I saw who I used to be before the fire took everything." "You saved us." "No," Zeke shook his head. You saved me. You and those children.
You gave me a reason to live again. He reached out and took her hand. I spent 7 years thinking my family was gone forever, that I'd never have anyone to love or protect again. But I was wrong. Family ain't about blood. It's about choice. And I choose you, Clara. All of you. Clara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I wish Mama could have met you. She would have liked you. I wish I could have met her too. Zeke squeezed her hand. But I think, in a way, I know her. Through you. Through your cooking, your stubbornness, your fierce love for those children. Elizabeth Whitfield raised an extraordinary daughter, and I'm honored to call that daughter mine. Clara leaned against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of him, the solid strength. I called you Papa, she said softly, before I left for Helena. I don't know if you remember. I remember. Did you mind? Zeke's arm came around her, pulling her close. It was the best thing anyone's ever called me.
They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Clara thought about all the miles she'd traveled, all the fears she'd faced, all the promises she'd made and kept. She thought about Mama and the promise to keep the family together. She thought about the 60 children whose lives would be changed because of the papers she'd delivered. She thought about her siblings, sleeping peacefully in their beds, safe and loved and home. And she thought about Zeke, this broken man who had opened his heart when he had every reason to keep it closed. Clara? Yeah? Thank you. For what? Zeke's voice was thick with emotion. For showing up at my gate that day. For being too stubborn to take no for an answer. For cooking your way into my heart and refusing to leave. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Thank you for giving me a family again. Clara smiled into the darkness. Thank you for letting us stay. A year later, Stone Creek Ranch was unrecognizable. The new barn stood tall and proud, bigger than the old one. The herd had doubled in size, and the ranch house, once cold and empty, was filled with noise and laughter and life. Tommy, now 11, had become Zeke's right hand. He rode with the men, worked the cattle, and was already talking about taking over the ranch someday. Jonas said he'd never seen a boy take to ranching so fast. Mercy, 9 years old and bursting with energy, had started a small choir among the ranch hands' children. They performed every Sunday after church, their sweet voices filling the valley with song. Sammy, 6 now, talked constantly. He still loved Molly best of all, and Zeke had given him the horse officially, papers and everything. The boy spent every spare moment in the stable, brushing and feeding and caring for his beloved mare. And Lily, 4 years old and growing like a weed, had Zeke wrapped around her little finger. She called him Papa now, like all the others, and he spoiled her shamelessly. As for Clara, she was still cooking, still running the kitchen with an iron hand and a generous heart. But she was also learning to read properly, thanks to the tutors Zeke had hired. And she was teaching Mercy and Tommy to cook, passing on Mama's recipes the way Mama had passed them to her. One evening in late summer, the whole family gathered for dinner. Clara had made a special meal to celebrate the anniversary of their arrival at Stone Creek. Roast beef with all the trimmings, fresh bread with honey, and the 3-layer chocolate cake that had taken her all afternoon. When everyone was seated, Zeke stood and raised his glass. A year ago today, a brave young woman showed up at my gate with 4 hungry children and a copper pot. She asked me for a chance, just one chance to prove herself. He looked around the table at the faces of his family. I thought I was doing her a favor by letting her stay. But I was wrong. She was doing me a favor. She was saving my life. His eyes found Clara's. To Clara, the best cook in 3 counties, the bravest person I've ever known, and the daughter I never expected but always needed. To Clara, the others echoed, raising their glasses. Clara felt her cheeks flush.
You're embarrassing me. Get used to it, Zeke grinned. I plan to embarrass you for the rest of your life. That's a long time. It better be. After dinner, Clara slipped away to the kitchen to start the dishes. She was elbow deep in soapy water when she felt a small hand tug at her apron.
Clara?
She looked down. Sammy stood there, his dark eyes serious.
What is it, sweetheart? I remember something. From before.
Clara dried her hands and knelt down to his level.
What do you remember? Mama. I remember Mama.
Sammy's voice was quiet but steady.
She had brown hair like you, and she smelled like bread, and she used to sing us to sleep.
Clara's throat tightened. That's right, she did. I couldn't remember for a long time. It was like there was a wall in my head. But now I can see her again. Sammy reached out and touched Clara's cheek. You look like her. When you cook, when you take care of us, you look just like her. Clara pulled him into a fierce hug, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you for remembering.
Clara? Yeah? I'm glad we came here. I'm glad we found Papa.
Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Later that night, after the children were in bed and the ranch was quiet, Clara stood on the porch and looked out at the stars. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the hunger and fear, the running and hiding, the desperate gamble that had led them to Zeke's gate. She thought about all the time she'd wanted to give up, all the time she'd been certain they wouldn't survive. But they had survived. More than survived. They had thrived. Clara pulled Mama's copper pot from its hook beside the door. She'd cleaned it 1,000 times since that terrible night in Willow Springs, but she could still see the dent where it had struck Deputy Horace's skull. Could still feel the weight of it in her hands, the righteous fury that had driven her to swing. She wasn't proud of hurting someone, but she wasn't sorry either. She'd done what needed to be done to protect her family, and she would do it again in a heartbeat. Can't sleep? Zeke appeared beside her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. Just thinking. About what? Clara took the coffee he offered and sipped it slowly. About how different things are now. About how scared I was when we first came here. You didn't seem scared. I was terrified. Every minute of every day. Clara smiled into her cup. But I couldn't show it. The little ones were counting on me. Zeke leaned against the porch rail, his eyes on the stars. You know what I remember most about that first day? When you told me you could cook. You said it like it was the only thing you had to offer, like it was nothing special. It was all I had. No, Zeke shook his head. You had so much more. Courage, determination, love so fierce it could move mountains. The cooking was just how you showed it. He turned to look at her. You didn't just feed my men, Clara. You fed my soul. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Zeke. I know I ain't good with words, never have been, but I need you to know something. He set down his coffee and took both her hands in his. The day you walked through my gate was the day my life started over. You gave me a second chance I didn't deserve, a family I never thought I'd have again, a reason to keep going. You gave us the same thing. Then I guess we saved each other. Zeke's rough thumbs rubbed circles on the backs of her hands. And I don't know what the future holds, Clara. Don't know what challenges we'll face or what storms we'll weather. But I know one thing for certain. What's that? Zeke smiled, and for the first time since she'd known him, the shadows in his eyes were completely gone. We'll face them together, as a family, always. Clara stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, holding tight to this man who had given them everything.
Always, she agreed. Above them, the stars blazed bright against the endless Montana sky, and in the house behind them, 4 children slept peacefully, dreaming of horses and songs and chocolate cake. Clara Whitfield had walked through fire to keep her family together. She had fought sheriffs and outlaws, braved wilderness and danger, risked everything she had for the people she loved. And now, finally, she was home. Not just a place with walls and a roof, not just a ranch with cattle and horses. Home was Zeke's gruff voice reading bedtime stories.
Home was Tommy's proud grin when he roped his first calf. Home was Mercy's songs floating through the evening air. Home was Sammy's laughter, so long silent, now ringing out across the valley. Home was Lily's sticky fingers reaching for another cookie. Home was love. Home was family. Home was forever. And Clara Whitfield, the homeless girl with nothing but a copper pot and a promise, had found it at last.